The Open Therapy Institute is addressing bias in mental health care. Go to our website, opentherapyinstitute.org. We have CE credit workshops about overlooked issues in the field. You can go to our workshop page and register now and become a member. And for those looking for a therapist, we match people with someone who's highly skilled and truly open. Just contact us through the contact page on the website or email us at info@opentherapyinstitute.org. Hi, I'm Leslie Elliott Boyce, and I'm speaking today with Dr. Andrew Hartz and Dr. Erec Smith. Erec Smith, you're the co-founder of Free Black Thought and a research fellow with the Cato Institute, and until recently, a professor of rhetoric as well. And I am really interested in your story and your work on promoting civil dialogue and clarification of DEI and what that means. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
So when you say clarification, well, actually, maybe I instead of diving in right there, would you mind just giving a little bit of your background and the work that you've done in your career up to now?
I received a Ph.D. in rhetorical theory and went into academia and decided to teach and write on effective communication. And it was fun until it wasn't. The collective campus climate of America is not what it used to be. It's growing ever more intolerant and illiberal, and I am the opposite of those things. So I jumped ship, as it were. I'm now a research fellow at the Cato Institute, but I'm still using my education in rhetoric. I'm trying to foster and promote civil discourse, which is basically, dialogue and deliberation that serves as kind of the lifeblood of civil society, right? The ideas don't sell themselves in the marketplace of ideas. We have to be good at that, and there are skills and techniques we can use to do that. There's also theory behind rhetoric, and people don't really realize how many people talked about rhetoric. Plato, Aristotle, Cicero, Vico, Erasmus, Nietzsche. Those are just off the top of my head, right? So I'm still using those things. But when it comes to DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, a lot of people think they know what that is, but they don't know what that is. And I want to work to clarify that for people who are looking at, for example, the executive orders from the Trump administration that are running roughshod over colleges and universities, uh, eradicating their DEI initiatives, whether it's an office or a program or what have you. Um, the vagueness of those executive orders, I think, is an issue. So clarification is something I've taken on.
My favorite class in college, one of my very, very favorite courses was a course on rhetoric. And I think it is so important because people miss the fact that we're often talking past each other when we're not sticking to the point in a really clear and rational way. So I really have a lot of appreciation for that. And I can see how it's gone off the rails in a lot of the civic dialogues that have been going on around race and gender and DEI over the past several years. So clarification seems very much needed. And I'm curious about that. When you say clarification, what are your thoughts and what needs to be clarified and where do we go from here?
Well, when people hear the terms diversity, equity, and inclusion, they think of those terms in their original meaning, right? Diversity is diversity of culture, ethnicity, viewpoint, right? Ideas, interests, things like that. Just the plurality, right? The kind of thing that makes America America. Inclusion is, well, feeling like you're included, feeling like you belong in a certain place. And equity is about giving everybody a fair chance at the starting line, to be happy and successful in society. Those definitions have been substantially altered. DEI is now suspicious of viewpoint diversity. It is defining equity as equality of outcome. So it's not like you have certain merits and you work hard to get to a certain place. If you are considered a member of a marginalized group, you are given certain things that other groups are not given. And inclusion is kind of exclusion of anything that can quote unquote harm marginalized groups, and that includes statements, microaggressions, and things like that. So it's actually the opposite of inclusion in a lot of ways. What's more, all these things are informed by an ideology called critical social justice. And what that ideology does is pit minorities as oppressed and the majority as oppressors. And it insists that racism is always already happening. Somehow, this interaction is racist. We just haven't figured it out yet, right? And that sounds like a joke, but it's not. And that's just a very short, brief version of the new DEI, if you will. Now, the issue with the executive orders, in my opinion, is that they're rather vague. And there are a lot of people out there who are doing DEI in the original sense that I just talked about. And it's doing no harm to anyone. It is making people feel included, and things like that. But I think those are being under attack too. And I don't think that's fair. So to clarify what the initial target was, the critical social justice informed DEI is something I'm trying to take on. But I also need to let people know that not everybody is doing it that way, and the baby is being thrown out with the bathwater.
Mhm.
And can you actually, what's the best DEI out there? Like, can you give me an example or a description of like just a DEI program that you just think is great?
I don't know. I can't cite one now. I am a former DEI officer, so I can tell you what I was doing. Um, I just wanted to inform people about the different viewpoints, right, that people have based on their experiences. I wasn't trying to essentialize based on race, saying that all people from this group are the same. That's another thing that critical social justice tends to do. Um, um, and I just wanted to inform people that, hey, not everybody sees the world the way you do. Just keep that in mind when you're communicating. Now, as a rhetoric scholar, perhaps that informed my DEI or my diversity work in trying to get people to understand their audiences, right? And not to assume the audience is one way or another based on immutable qualities like race or ethnicity or something like that. Yes, I just wanted to open people's eyes. It wasn't, you know, racism's never going away. It wasn't that the society is inherently anti-black. It wasn't, those kinds of things. And it also included celebration, celebration of various ethnicities. So that's the way I did it. And I'm sure there are people doing it that way now. See, I do know people here and there who are trying to do this well, but I don't know the specifics, the ins and outs of their programs or anything like that.
Mhm.
So it's like viewpoint diversity, quality, treating people equally, and including people with a range of perspectives is basically,
Yes.
yeah, interesting.
Well, when I was in graduate school and I was going to be taking this course called Multicultural Perspectives in my counseling program, I hoped that what we would do was really get deep into viewpoint diversity and the diversity of experience that people actually have coming from different cultures, which would be, it would be endless if you really break it down. It goes down to the individual. I mean, at the end of the day, everybody has a different experience of life, but you can kind of get some of the you can get into a dialogue, I think, if you're really being open and philosophical and curious about how different demographic patterns, different uh, experiences of oneself in a broader culture are shaped by your immutable characteristics and can be shaped, but aren't necessary. So it's such a delicate, nuanced thing, but you do see patterns. And so I hoped we would have like real conversations about race and sex and gender and immigration and things like this. And what I found was that it was very flat. It was very reductionist, and it stifled that same kind of curiosity that I was hoping we would be meeting in that course. And when you said that you watched academia change, you saw it be this illiberal experience. I don't want to put words in your mouth. It was something like a shift that you seem to have observed. What was that like, and how long were you teaching? And I'm curious, like, what was your experience at the beginning? And was it just a disappointment, disheartening from the outset, or did you see things really start to spiral downward?
Well, academia was somewhat disappointing from the outset for various reasons. I won't go into all of those. Regarding DEI or diversity work and things like that, again, I was all about it when I thought I knew, I knew what that meant. And I practiced it the way I told you a little bit earlier. Things started to change about 10 years ago, I'd say. And a lot of the people who I went to graduate school with, who always played the quote unquote race card and accused people of racism when they were doing something completely innocuous, right? Those people ended up running the show, in my field anyway. And it really hit me hard when I realized that, you know, even I was a target, a black male who's supposed to be, listened to and centered and things like that. I was a target because I was saying quote unquote white things. For example, I don't think it's racist to teach standard English to black students. That made me a white supremacist, and I was called as much by white people. So there's that, and I was also called a bad black person by a white person during a C-SPAN interview last week. Uh,
Wow.
so so yeah, it's following me, it seems. But that being said, I'm not surprised by any of this. It's something I've been dealing with for quite some time, even before college, to some degree. So academia has kind of gone in that direction, you know, and that is a direction that is intolerant. It lacks viewpoint diversity, and it discourages dialogue. It discourages communication. I'm a rhetoric professor. All right. That doesn't, align with my mission as an academic.
Right.
Ironically, the field of rhetoric and composition is one of the worst fields when it comes to the liberalism and lack of desire to speak and dialogue with people who disagree with us. So all that was the writing on the wall, and I said, you know what, I'm out.
Can I ask a little bit more about the experience of being a black man with heterodox thoughts? Because I think that among some people who maybe don't have that experience or know people with those views, they would say, well, black people can do whatever they get, the standard is on white people and white men get it so bad. And if you're black, you can say whatever you want and there's no cost. And that's clearly not true. And in some ways, well, I'm actually just really curious about your perspective, but there are maybe particular challenges with that experience that people might miss or have blind spots around.
Well, there is a script. In contemporary DEI, the kind informed by critical social justice. There's a script, there's a dramatis personae, right? And you have the minorities, you have the majority, You have the people who are allies to the minority, right? And you have the minorities who are acting like the majority. There are much worse terms for those people, right? But that's all the those are the roles you're allowed to have. Now, I am somebody who, wants to see the best for Black people. I am a Black person. I want to help people flourish and be happy and fulfilled in American society, right? But in order to do that, I do that in a pragmatic way, by, saying you should have a grasp of standard English, things like that. You should talk across differences and things like that. And those are not my lines in this play. Those are the lines of the majority, and I'm stepping on those lines, right? So I'm treated especially bad because I definitely have to be erased. I'm a Black person who's speaking against this contemporary DEI, which is more dangerous than a white person doing it, right? That's how it's perceived anyway. So the vitriol towards me was especially bad.
That's an example of the no true Scotsman rhetorical fallacy,
Yes,
isn't it? Mhm.
exactly.
I think it's interesting to pull out some of the fallacies that are really up front in this sort of cultural dialogue. And I wonder, do you have favorites? Do you have some like standouts for yourself?
Oh yeah, straw man for sure. Um, saying that something is one way so that you can, win that situation when it's totally another way. Um, to be fair, I've been accused of that too, but I think it's an incorrect accusation. But a lot of that is happening ad hominem, obviously.
Mhm.
And insulting people. And another thing that came up during that C-SPAN interview was that I couldn't be trusted because I worked for Cato. That is technically an ad hominem, because it's talking about, oh, he can't possibly say something correct at all because he works for them, right?
Mhm.
So a lot of that happens. Genetic fallacy. Because something happened 100 years ago, it's going to happen now, right? What else
What's an
is
example? What's an example of the genetic fallacy? Like you're thinking like racism was really bad 100, I mean, years ago, and so it's the same now. Is it?
colleges were initially for white males, therefore it's bad for anybody else in 2025,
Right, right,
Mhm. Mhm.
although it's changed drastically, right?
right.
Yes.
So you left your teaching position, your faculty position in as you were starting to see this thing get so ramped up and so prevalent. And what was that like? I mean, there must be a lot of emotion and I can only imagine leaving something that you've worked so hard to do to change course. Is it a sense that it's hopeless there now, or that there's no point in doing that work in the state of academia today?
I sincerely thought I could do more to help academia outside of academia that I could within, right? It's hard to fight the enemy behind enemy lines, you know. I know I just use a very martial metaphor, and I don't mean to 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 do that, but I thought I could do more from a think tank, talking about these things, trying to expose certain things, and that keeps me going. I think I can still do that. I think I've done it to some degree, and I want to continue. But I mean, I would be lying if I said I didn't miss academia to some degree. I don't miss grading a pile of papers. I don't miss that part. I do miss teaching and working with students and things like that. Fortunately, with the think tank, um, the research aspect of being an academic is still there. Think tanks are kind of like colleges without the students, so that aspect, kind of keeps me going, and that's great. And I really like that. But and every once in a while I give lectures to the interns about rhetoric and civil discourse and things like that. I'm doing that Friday, as a matter of fact.
Mhm.
So I guess a little bit of the teachings there as well. But it's definitely a different situation. And in my opinion, it's a situation that's going to better ensure that I kind of right the ship in academia.
Mhm.
I have a question about this. I know you have some criticisms of some of the reforms that are, I mean, I think a mixed view, I guess is probably, maybe I'm wrong about that, but I think you have a kind of a mixed view of some of the reforms that are being attempted at universities. I mean, the day that we're recording this, there's a big news story that, I don't know, something like $2 billion is being pulled from Harvard related to research. And a lot of this funding is tied to abolishing DEI. Sometimes it's related to other complaints as well. So I'm wondering, one, I'd love to hear your criticism and or what you think is right and what you think is not right about these attempted reforms. But I wanted to also just to complicate it a little bit as you're responding. One of my concerns when people criticize these actions is they often don't have an alternative for how they think universities should be reformed. They kind of think, well, don't pull DEI funding and don't pull research funding, but they don't have anything that they think would you can do to actually get reform. You just kind of keep wringing your hands and write letters to the editor and nothing will change. And so I'm curious in that context, like what you think the most effective way to really get, I think, sweeping fast change would ideally be.
Well, I can say this, if my understanding is correct, the schools are getting rid of school-sponsored DEI programs, which is to say, if the students want to get together and do it on their own without school sponsorship funding and things like that, they can do so. So, the idea that these initiatives are going away completely doesn't have to be like that. There are things in place before the Civil Rights Act where Black students were doing things themselves. I'm thinking of the Jubilee Singers. I'm thinking of Carter Woodson, who basically invented Black History Month. They were doing it on their own with their own fundraising, and it arguably was more effective in inducing Black pride and identity than a lot of the things going on today. So DEI initiatives need not go away completely. They just won't be sponsored by the college. They won't be funded by the college. Um, all that said, a lot of the main issues that people think about when they hear the words diversity, equity, and inclusion are already in the Civil Rights Act of 1964, right? Which was again revised in the 90s, if I'm not mistaken. And it deals with the original definition of affirmative action, which was do not discriminate based on immutable qualities like race or sex or something like that, and make sure that everybody has access to the same resources. So if all the white kids can afford a tutor, you got to make sure that the Black people at least know that these tutors are there, right? And open it to them as well. That's the original meaning of affirmative action.
Hmm.
It turned into quota systems about 10 years later, 8 to 10 years later, and was finally struck down a couple of years ago, regarding emissions anyway. It's still there in many other ways. But if we just re-emphasize the Civil Rights Act and make sure that people are abiding by it, right, then, that could go a long way. In fact, a lot of these EOs, these executive orders, rightly say that a lot of these DEI initiatives are unconstitutional because they are prefacing certain people based on their race and things like that, which is, against the Civil Rights Act of 1964. So I would just, make the Civil Rights Act cool again, like center it, focus on it, emphasize it, talk about it explicitly, right? What's in it, what's not in it, right? Educate society on what it is to be diverse and anti-racist from the civil rights perspective, not from the critical social justice perspective.
As you're speaking about this and DEI and the civil rights, I'm wondering, DEI as a brand or as a meme seems to have it's very much associated with the critical social justice or critical race ideology. And I think I think that many people have been talking about how harmful it's actually been to race relations, to get people together in a room and talk about how Black people are and how white people are and who's good and who's bad, and foment this kind of suspicion and resentment. And I wonder if it's too late for DEI, TM as a thing, but maybe it is a really good idea to have something come in and take its place, something that's a peaceful, oriented towards connecting people and helping people to understand each other and kind of undoing some of the damage of this critical theory-based teaching that we've all been undergoing.
Well, again, I think we should re-emphasize the Civil Rights Act, but we can also use some of those funds that were going to DEI initiatives and put them into outreach programs. Um, because one argument about the Civil Rights Act is that, okay, fine, but it's not helping minorities rise out of whatever socioeconomic hole they're in or something like that, which is itself fallacious because 80% of Black Americans aren't poor and living in in such areas. But anyway, that's another situation. These outreach programs, which go to high schools, wherever, downtrodden areas or not, and they bring the scholarship and the discipline to the students, right? And what's more, the students are brought to campus every once in a while, to show them what it means to be a biology major, show them what it means to be a chemistry major or something like that, right? Get them acclimated to the campus so that there isn't so much of a culture shock when they get there, their first year. We have bridge programs now that happen the summer before first year, right? For minorities to get acclimated. I think that's too late. I think it's much too late. I think we should start doing that kind of thing in like the ninth grade, right? I think that's where you do that. And I think that will be much more effective in helping students get into college without affirmative action and actually graduate in 4 to 6 years. Like the national average for graduation is. A lot of students are either dropping out because they were accepted by a school that is a little over their heads, right? Or they switch majors, and they often switch majors into something that is considered a quote unquote grievous studies, like queer theory or African American studies or whatever, which is fine. But those students wanted to be scientists, or mathematicians or something like that. And I think these outreach programs can help them actually acquire those dreams. And it's a better way of spending the money.
Hmm.
And what do you think of the conflation of economics with race in DEI education? I mean, this is like Joe Biden saying, what was the line? Poor kids are just as smart as white kids. And you hear this, and when you mention, 80% of Black people aren't poor, they aren't living in that kind of stereotyped, marginalized reality that we get pumped full of. I couldn't help but think that when I was going through my own DEI class, which was that course I mentioned earlier, that so much of what we were talking about was economics, but we were just using race to talk about it.
And that's been the case for a very long time, you know. Um, I think focusing on socioeconomic status would be a better way of doing things. And I'm not alone in that. But that argument seems to have gone nowhere since I've been hearing it when I was a teenager, you know. So and you know, a part of me thinks that race is being put there as kind of a distraction almost, away from the economic salience of the whole thing. But that sounds like a conspiracy theory, so I'm just
Well,
going to,
it seems like
yeah,
part of it to me is like this is a part of the development of Marxism over the
yeah,
past 150 years that, these movements are, the neo-Marxist movements largely ignore class or conflate it with race to the extent that they address it at all. And yeah, it's hard to wrap your head around exactly. I mean, I struggle with why. I heard some people would say, well, they couldn't foment in the United States the kind of class consciousness division that they wanted to, that they were more successful at in other countries. And so the way to kind of get this revolutionary division that they wanted to foster was to move to race. But it does, yeah, it is baffling that how much the far left has moved away from class.
yes, and that's an influence from the Frankfurt School, Marcuse, Adorno, Horkheimer. Were saying similar things. Marcuse went as far as to say, we can't get them on class, so let's get them on race.
Wow.
I mean, he was very explicit about that, right? And he said, we're having a hard time convincing Americans to revolt because they're happy. You know, um, who isn't happy? The black kids. So, use them to have them be the foot soldiers of the proletariat, you know.
Right.
And he basically wrote instructions for what's happening right now. And I think we shouldn't lose sight of that.
No, that's really powerful. It is. When you said it sounds like a conspiracy theory, I guess some things are conspiratorial, but they're not necessarily crazy or outlandish. I mean, it does. I have wondered often, like, what good aim would any of this have? It's just seeding resentment and making people dislike each other.
Right. And a colleague in my field, um, who's a card-carrying Marxist, has gone as far as to say, his black students who want to learn standard English are being selfish and immature because they just want to be successful in this society, which is evil. You're perpetuating society by being happy and successful in it. You know, um, yes, I mean he's on video saying this. You know, and I mean that sounds like a conflict of interest to me. You're teaching these students valuable skills for happiness and success in the society, but you hate the society,
Mhm.
right? So that seems to not match,
Mhm.
and that's happening a lot.
Yeah, well, a lot of what we end up talking about on this series is counselor education, mental health in general. And uh, when I was in my program and learning to be a counselor, one of the things that we were being taught was that it was our duty to help our clients increase their racial identity salience. And that just seemed so at odds with human flourishing and living a good life. Make somebody aware of the ways that they should either feel guilty or resentful. And when you're saying it's a conflict of interest, it's just that's what came to my mind is that this is anti-therapeutic and it's anti-success. And when we in the class that I was talking about, we had mostly white students. There were mostly women, and I'd say that the demographic was mostly a white woman in her 30s. There were a couple of men, and there was one black woman in the class. She was really nice. I'd had her in another class. We got along fine, and she was very quiet this whole class. And I wondered, how is this impacting you? How is it impacting a person who's targeted by this ideology in a different way? Because I know it's impacting me to sit here and hear that white people are bad and that we're just, any way you do things, you're going to mess up. It's a microaggression or it's your latent white supremacy. But this girl's being targeted by this in a different way. It's almost like you need protection. You're both the object of our affection and also an object of pity. And I thought it's got to do a number on people's heads, this stuff. I mean, there must be a seduction in it to be offered, this place on a pedestal in some ways, but at the same time, it's deeply dehumanizing and demoralizing to be told that you don't have any innate agency, that you're just being acted upon. And so I wonder what that's like to hear you're not a real representative of, you're not a black person. You're not really black. You're a white supremacist if you disagree with this stuff. That must be a really confusing experience.
I want to empower students. I want to empower minority students. I want to let them know the agency they have, the locus of control they have, and to do what they can within that, right? And I'm not alone in that. Ian Rose doing similar things. Kendall Qualls in Minnesota is doing similar things. The Hidden Genius Project is in one of those outreach programs I mentioned earlier, and they're doing that. But wanting to give students agency instead of convincing them that the world is against them, and we have to get rid of the world, or the world system or something like that, makes me the bad guy.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah.
Well, thanks so much for coming on, Eric. It's good to see you again. The
Yeah.
audience doesn't know that Eric and I were both at Heterodox Academy. We were both writing fellows together for quite some time and
Yeah.
have been exchanging ideas for a long time, but it's been a while since we've reconnected, and it's good to see you.
It's good to see you too, and good to meet you, Leslie.
Yeah, it's really great to meet you, Eric. I've really enjoyed speaking with you, and I'm really excited to learn more about the work that you're doing. So where can people find you if they want to read more of your writing or learn more about you?
Well, the easiest way is to Google me. EREC though, Erec Smith. ERIC Erec Smith is a very different person. Also a writer, and he's a cool guy. I know. But I'm the EREC Smith. So you can go ahead and Google that. I'm also obviously on the Cato website. And I also am co-founder and president of Free Black Thought, which is a nonprofit that celebrates viewpoint diversity within Black America. And you can find me there as well.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much again for joining us today.
Thank you.